Welcome to the Magdalene Voices, giving voice to those silenced for centuries through sacred conversations with beautiful, illuminating souls. I'm your host, spiritual business coach, mentor, catalyst, and facilitator Maria Estella. I serve spiritual entrepreneurs, Magdalenes rising, and radiant beings just like you with the expansion and growth of yourself and your business, aligning you with your deep inner truth, bringing to life that which you're here to birth, and supporting you in expressing your soul's divine purpose through your being and your doing in this lifetime. If you have ever wondered about your Magdalene connection and calling and whether you are a Magdalene, I invite you to download the free Magdalene blueprint I've created for you. Go to mariaestella.com/AYM to get it. Also, as you'll hear in our conversation, Mastery Through Love, my 6-week online healing journey for spiritual entrepreneurs, will open its doors for enrollment on Monday. First dips will be given to those within my community, so if you haven't already, be sure to join my newsletter to stay connected and updated. You can do so on my website, mariaestella.com, where you can also find previous episodes and their show notes. Mastery Through Love is designed to help you stand out, speak your truth, and share yourself, your services, and your products with confidence, care, and satisfaction. It's basically everything you need to jumpstart the expansion of love in your life and your business, dissolving the effects of a fear-based mindset, holding you back, keeping you stuck, and tripping you up. If that tickles your soul, go to mariaestella.com/journey to find out more. And finally, if you're a soul-driven, heart-based spiritual entrepreneur, don't forget to check out my new podcast, Spiritual Business with Maria Estella. It's designed to inspire you, empower you, guide you, nurture you, and activate you. You can find it on YouTube as well as everywhere podcasts are being broadcasted, or click the link in the show notes. Today I'm joined by Victoria Vix Maxwell, a priestess for present times, a modern mystic and spiritual teacher in Converse sneakers. Vix believes that being connected to our own hearts, souls, and spiritual team is our natural state, and she's excited to be able to be of service to those who are searching for a way back. Vix is devoted to helping others reconnect to their own light, inner guidance, and power so they can live out their best and highest lives. She supports her growing worldwide community through one-on-one soul readings, workshops, the New Age Hipster podcast, blog, YouTube channel, online groups, and social media ministry. Vix is an ex-high school and special ed teacher. She's a young adult indie author and enjoys drinking tea, exploring stone circles, eating vegan pizza, and watching 80s movies. Join us as we share a sacred conversation on Christianity, all things Wicca, Vix's journey as a Magdalene, and when Mary shows up. As always, I invite you to listen with an open heart as well as with an open mind, and take what serves you and leave the rest. Here is our sacred conversation. Vix, welcome to Magdalene Voices. I just want to start off by saying this is a very serious podcast, so no laughing and no jokes and no nothing. And we're very serious here, so very, very, very serious.
I'm not sure that.
Well,
you do that.
The only problem with that statement is that you've already heard a lot of the episodes, so you know that's not true.
Yeah. And that's why I'm here.
yeah. So it's like, no, we tend to have a lot of, fun while going deep, which I think is important. And, sometimes the spiritual stuff can, we go to infinity beyond and we go deep and dark, but it's also important to remember that there's the lightheartedness and the joy and the satisfaction in it as well. Welcome to the Magdalene Voices. I am super excited and thrilled that you're here. And as I was saying just before we came on, I started, seeing visions and downloads of things to go through. So I'm just going to jump in. You don't know anything about, you've just said yes, and I've given you some topics, so you don't even know where we're going to start. But where we're going to start is, I would like to know, because I know that you've had a journey through religion, in and out of Christianity, in and out of Wicca, in and out. And I would love to hear your journey, like the journey from where you were at, if you would start, and you were born, and then you don't have to go all the way back, but your journey with Christianity, I suppose, your journey in and out of that, and then you're like, when did you lose it? Because I know that you've completely lost it and is fully woo and out and spiritual, new age, whatever. So the floor is yours. Let me hear it.
Yeah. Okay. Just trying to think where to start. I guess, like, ever since I was young, I've always had a feeling that there was something else out there, like a higher, like a something, God, I guess, is what we call it.
Yeah.
But I always had a sense that there was this thing that existed that created me, and that it was the reason I was here, and it was this thing that I could connect to and talk to. And I never really questioned that at any point. I feel like I kind of came into this world with that knowing that there was something bigger than me, and that was just like a belief that I had since I was born, which was interesting because my family weren't religious or anything. They were very open-minded, and they were a little bit woo, a little bit they were kind of open to it, but they weren't fully religious or had beliefs that they tried to put on me and my sister. But I just always kind of just accepted God exists, and there's more to this life than just me in this physical body.
Yeah.
I remember this one time when I was in primary school. I must have been probably maybe 7 years old. And one of the kids in the class asked the teacher, what happens when you die? As kids do, when you're when you're that age, you're like, what happens when you die? And the teacher said, nothing, that's it, that's the end. Nothing happens. And I remember my whole body and my I was just like, what? That thought had never occurred to me.
No.
Ever. And I didn't have at that point, I didn't have any sort of solid ideas of what happened or whatever, but the idea that nothing happened when you died had just never occurred to me. So that was kind of the point, I think, when I started to really think about things, well, if I believe that something happens, what do I believe? Yeah. And from that point, I kind of, I thought a lot about God, and I prayed a lot, even though, again, I didn't come from a religious family, but I remember kind of laying in bed at night, just talking to God and saying hi and asking for favors, having a chat or whatever. Yeah. And then when I kind of got into my teenage years, I was really drawn to all things woo. I used to buy a lot of crystals. I had a lot of, I didn't really, it was a little while before I got properly into witchcraft, but I was kind of on the edges of that. I was really curious about that, and I'd go into the new age shops and I'd look at all the crystals and look at the books and be like, wow, this is really cool. And then when I was about 14 or 15, I got into witchcraft and Wicca. And it was really cool around that time. It was the time when The Craft came out at the cinema, and there was this big resurgence of a crystal shop on every corner, and everyone was getting into Wicca. And so that was kind of, I guess, my first kind of step into something that was more organized, something that was okay, so this is what happens, this is who we're connecting with, this is what the being is called, this is how we do it, this is the structure. And for a while I really enjoyed that, but it didn't feel like it answered all of my questions. It was this is great, but I'm not sure, I still have questions that aren't being answered here. And so I kept some of that, I kept some of those ideas with me, and I let go of some of the other ideas. And it was, a few more years later, and I started hanging out with this group of friends who went to church on the weekend. And up till this point, the idea of church had never appealed to me. never in a million years was I somebody that would go to church, especially after being into witchcraft like a few years previous. And I kind of saw, like, I started to see something in these people. Like, they were always talking about like how much fun they had at church and like these great things that were happening. And they seemed, I guess the best way that I can describe it now that I have those words is they seemed a little more high vibe than some people that I was spending time with. And eventually they were like, oh, do you want to come to church with us? And like the idea of it was like, oh, really? No, I don't. But eventually I was like, okay, like I'll come and I'll check it out. Like, you know, I'll come once and see what it's like. And the first time I went to church, I had such a feeling of being welcomed and like coming home, and everybody was nice to me. Like, people talk to me. If you were standing alone somewhere, like someone would come up and be like, hey, like I'm so-and-so, like welcome, what do you think of the service? And I'd never experienced that in my life before, where people were welcoming and friendly. And it was like, oh wow, like suddenly I've been here once and I've got this community already of people that care about me. And that felt incredible. And so from there I started to obviously connect with Jesus, and I started, you know, inviting him into my life, and we became pretty good friends pretty quickly. And then as I kind of like went through the journey of being in the church, you know, there are all of these things that I really loved about it and really resonated with it. But as I kind of got deeper and did more study and kind of you know, got into Bible study and kind of spent more time listening to sermons and spent more time understanding like what the church was really about, the more questions came up again. Like, okay, well, this is great, but it still doesn't answer still doesn't answer all my questions. It still doesn't fulfill all my spiritual needs. So in the end I kind of decided actually the church isn't really right for me. I wished that it was, because there were so many things I did love about it, but there are things missing for me. So I ended up leaving the church, and for a long time I was kind of just on this path of just mishmash spirituality and being like, oh, like you know, this looks interesting and that looks interesting, and I'll do a bit of yoga and I'll do some meditation and I'll do some of this and some of that. And it was only really about 2012 where I started to really kind of make it all work. Like, I started to kind of get what my thing was and what my way in was, and that was really exciting. And then, like, you know, many years after I had been at church, I did a meditation that was like a Meet Your Spirit Guides meditation, and Jesus came in as my teacher guide. And I remember just like being on the floor, like crying hysterically, because it was like, he's still here. It's like, I don't have to be in the church to be working with him. Like, he's still with me. Like, he is not the church. He is this different, he's an entity separate of that. And that, you know, that actually kind of helped me to really get back on my path, because it was like, it's okay to do yoga and to hang out with Jesus. Like, yay!
And
that's kind of the long story. But
that's such an important point, is that because I never, well, that's not true. A part of my journeys, I wasn't into Wicca, and I, you know, being born and raised in Denmark, which is a Protestant country, we have a church on every street corner, but it's not filled. Not on Sundays, only during services on Christmas and Easter, I suppose. And understanding how, or learning from Yeshua, or Jesus himself, that the church was not his, and is not his. And I know, you know, this may trigger a shit ton of people, and I'm sorry if this is the first time that you hear this, but the church was not built by Jesus, nor was it built by Mary Magdalene. It was built by his followers. And when I read anything that is said to be of Jesus, and when I commune with him in any way, shape, or form, the understanding that I get is that it was never meant to be a church in that sense. Yes, they did meet, and they did have sermons, and they did have services and so forth. But it was never meant to be one specific religion. It was meant to be the way of the heart. I'm curious to know, because you said that in 2012, something clicked that made you find. Can you share, do you want to share a little bit about what it was for you that clicked into place in terms of finding your way?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and this is one of the things that I always go on about. So if anyone's heard this story, apologies. But I was in a job that I was finding really challenging. Yeah. And I'd been in lots of jobs before that I found really challenging, but there's something about this particular place and this role that was just, it was really exhausting. Like, I was going home every night being completely depleted, completely exhausted. Yeah. I was, struggling, like getting up in the morning, just being like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing with my life? Yeah. And the work itself was fine, but there was something about the energy of this place that was just off for me. Yeah. And so I kind of started to, and I don't even really remember like exactly how I got to this point, but I was still following some kind of spiritual path, like, dabbling and whatever. Yeah. And I came across like some stuff about protecting your energy. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I need to be doing right now. So I started protecting my energy and learning about what it meant to be an empath and to be sensitive. I was like, oh, this explains so much about my whole life and everything that's kind of happened up to now. Yeah. And when I started to work with my energy, I started to protect my energy. I started clearing my energy every day, protecting myself, grounding myself. That's when I started to feel this huge shift. And I'd actually been kind of prior to the energy stuff, I had kind of been trying to connect with my guides on a deeper level. Like, because I always knew they were there, but I had never really been able to like clearly get those downloads or be like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. And I had been asking them, how can I talk to you? Like, what am I supposed to be? Like, give me a sign of what I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah. And I remember the only clear thing that I ever got from them before I started doing this work was that you need to protect your energy. They were like, once you open up, you're going to be so open that we're not going to let you do that until you know how to work with your energy. Yeah. And that was like the only thing they ever said to me, like really clearly, before I started to work with my energy. Yeah. And so once I started to do that, then my guides became clearer. I felt more connected with them. I started to get those little nudges like, oh, this could be something good for you. Why don't you go and explore this? Yeah. And here we are. But that was kind of, working in a job that I didn't like was really the thing that helped me to get onto this path, which I think it is for a lot of people.
Yes, exactly. I was just going to say that it's the Linnet quote unquote, where, the cracks, that's where the light gets in, right? Yeah. It's I don't think I've met any light worker who's never had a crack or a dark night of the soul or rude awakenings, or, because it's not to say, because I don't ascribe to the idea of a judgmental God, and it's not, but when we are quote unquote brought to our knees, that is when we are the most willing to open ourselves up to the opportunities or the possibilities that we're not able to see, or we haven't been able to see before. Something, again, really important that I think in terms of protecting your energy while opening yourself up, because I know that for a lot of people, spirituality is about being in the ethers. It's about opening ourselves up. Sorry, I have a crystal. It's about opening ourselves up to the ethers. But I've also heard how if you open up your upper level chakras without being fully grounded, things can go really, really wrong. And this is interesting because I didn't think that we were going to go there, but I want to hear your take on this, because the way that I see it is that if we open up our, you know, our seventh and our eighth chakra and even further up without having grounded ourselves or being able to protect ourselves and ground ourselves, then to me, that's where we can actually lose our mind, literally lose our mind and become mentally disturbed, depressed, insane, have manic. And of course, I am not giving medical advice and, you know, there's no, you know, see a doctor and all those things, but I'm curious, what's your take on that?
Yeah, it's really interesting. When I was really guided to, well, I was guided to protect my energy before I did anything else. So
Yes.
before I even like grounded my energy or cleared my energy or did anything, it was like, you have to learn how to create something around yourself so that you're safe.
Yes.
And then from there, then you can learn how to clear your energy. Then you can start grounding. But for me, it's grounding my energy and working with my lower chakras has been as important as working with the higher chakras. If I'm not working with my lower chakras, like I can't function. Like I go up to these places and I have like these really beautiful experiences, but then I can't come back. I come back down, and I'm, you know, I miss appointments or like things at work don't get done that are supposed to be done. You know, there's no food in the fridge. There's like all of these things. It's like, oh, well, that's great. I had a really beautiful meditation today and a nice Reiki session and whatever. But what about my material needs and my physical body? Like without your physical body, you're not here. No. And that was a huge learning for me, because I'm somebody who's like naturally not grounded at all. Like naturally I'm all air and I'm all like up here. But when I started to work with my energy, you know, it wasn't like, okay, cool, now you can open your third eye. It was like, now you learn to ground. And once you've done that work, okay, now you learn to stop stressing out about money so much. Okay, now you learn to sort out your relationships. And then once you kind of start to get some of those things happening, then it's like, okay, now we can move up, and now we can start to, you know, work on some of the third eye, because everyone wants to open their third eye, right?
Exactly. Yes. Everyone just wants to, you know, pineal gland and do all these meditation and just want to, but if someone, and that's probably if someone is working hard on trying to do that, you know, I think that eventually they will probably succeed. But if that's someone that's listening to this podcast, I want you to reconsider that and actually, you know, perhaps even do what you did, like start by protecting your energy, start by working through your chakras from the bottom up rather than top down. We don't do that. And again, you know this because it's, to me, it's the same. It's just work inside out. You don't work from the outside in, you work from the inside out and from the, you know, from the ground and up. And also an important lesson in that is that we are here to, and I think that's part of, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I know that this was for me, that for the longest time, I didn't understand why I was here. Like why, when I understand what is out there or what is possible without this human cloak, like why am I here? And once I realized, oh, I'm here to be of service. I'm here to be of purpose, and understand that the only way what is to come through me can come through me is by me allowing it to come through, is like, oh, that's why I'm here. That, you know, that gave a whole different meaning to my life and purpose to my life. So if you're someone who's working hard on that, if ask yourself, how protected are you and how grounded are you? I think that's a very important lesson. Now I understand why I asked that question.
Because it was so important for me, because I think, because when I was a kid, like I wasn't like super open, but like there were a few things that happened to me when I was young, where there was like a ghost in my house and a few different things like that had kind of made me think like, oh, like, you know, I've got some sort of ability to like tune into that stuff. And of course at that time it just completely freaked me out. But then there was also like this part of me that like, and I think this happens to a lot of us, is like we want to be special, and we want to see ghosts, and we want to see like
Yeah.
grandma at the end of the bed, and we want to see someone's spirit guide stand next to them. And it's like, we think that if like being spiritual and being connected, like that's what it is about.
Yeah.
So we search for that. Like we read all these, I did this as well. We read all these books, like how to be psychic. Like, and then it's like, for me, I had to do all of the other stuff. And while I was doing that, and this is a really funny story actually about when my third eye opened. And it's like, I don't think your third eye just like is closed and then it opens one day, but there was this activation that happened. And I had been working on myself for a really long time. I'd been meditating, I've been working on my energy. I had been listening to my guidance and taking action towards it. And one night I went out for a few beers in town with my partner, and I was on the bus on the way home, and I was sort of, you know, when you're like half asleep, I was sort of half asleep on the bus after a couple of beers, and my third eye just started like it was just buzzing, and it was like, oh my gosh, like what's happening? Like, what is happening? Like, it's really cool, but so weird. Like I'm just on the bus home from the pub. Like what's going on? And the only way that for me anyway, like I had to be doing the other stuff, and I had to stop obsessing over, well, I want to be psychic, and I want to see this stuff, and I want to be like, you know, all these people that talk about seeing all these things. But for me, opening my third eye wasn't like, okay, now I can see everything all the time, because I'm like, I don't want that. I don't want to see everything all the time. So I have really strong boundaries in place where if I've got a deck of cards in front of me and someone in front of me who is there for a session, then I will be all open for them. But I will never pick up anything for anyone else.
No. And it's so, I mean, that's such an important lesson, to be living your life. That, you know, we live in an age where, you know, it's not about going into the desert and sitting on a rock. Of course, there's times for us to do that, but that's not what spirituality or walking your path is about these days. It's about living your life and incorporating your spirituality into your everyday life, and of course also business, you know, because that's what I do. So it's like incorporating it into because that's you know, to becoming whole. What was the question I had about your? Oh, maybe it's not so much a question, but for me, you know, I see it as an unveiling. I remember, and I don't want to say that my third eye necessarily it's not open in the outward, it's more open in the inward sense sometimes. Well, because I remember when people started showing up at the bed, you know, during the night at my bed, where I had to be like, you can't do that. You can't wake me up in the middle of the night standing, like I wake up and then there's someone in the room. Like, no. That's not how we do this. Cause I got shit scared. I was like, someone's in my room. And I was like, someone is in the bed. And so that, you know, that whole protection and setting boundaries and saying, this is what I will accept. This is what I won't accept. This is how it will work. This is how it won't work. That's so important. And understand that we have that, you know, ability and understanding that we're not at the whim of some external force. I love how when you talked about, you know, your childhood and knowing God, because very often God becomes a religious, you know, God becomes something that religion has created. And I guess to you and me both, you know, we know that it goes far beyond that. Maybe this is me, but I very much consider you to be a Magdalene. And so at some point, I suppose she must have shown up as well for you. The Magdalene. I know that there are more than one Magdalene, but she must have shown up as well. How did that happen? What happened?
I feel like she's always been around.
Yeah.
You know, like I feel like she's always been here, but there was a point where I kind of acknowledged her presence. Yeah. You know, not that long ago, like I think probably when I got my first goddess oracle deck, so probably like maybe 3-4 years ago, was the first time that I really thought about Mary Magdalene as more than, the woman in the stories.
Yes.
And I feel like it was a really slow sort of like, hi, like Mary Magdalene, hi. And, over the years, like the more I've pulled those cards and the more I've like thought about her, like the louder she gets. There's a really interesting thing that has happened recently where I've just launched an oracle course really recently.
Yes.
And she was the one that gave me that. Like she gave me the message to do it like well over a year ago.
Yeah.
And I was just in meditation. I was like, what is the next step for my business? And she came through so clearly. And she said, you need to teach people how to read oracle cards. I was like,
yes.
Is that it?
Yes.
Like, is that it? She's like, yeah, okay. And then of course I did start to do some work on that course, and I, did some writing on it and had some ideas and everything. But then I got busy and other things came up. And a couple of months ago, I was in meditation and I was like, Mary Magdalene, like, what do I need to, like, what's my next step? And she was like, are you serious? Are you serious right now? Like, are you really doing this? Are you really sitting here at your altar asking for the next steps? Like, you have pages and pages of journaling of next steps that I have given you, and you haven't done those things yet. So go away and do those things and then come back and we'll chat again. And I was like, oh my goodness, like I'm such like, I just had this feeling of like, why do I keep asking for guidance when I know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing? I'm just not finishing, like I'm not following through with things.
I love that because, and the reason I'm laughing so hard is because that I so recognize her in that, in the sense that, people seem to, and I know of course that there are more than one Mary, and there's the mother, and then, but for me, Mary Magdalene is that, you already, you know what to do. I gave it to you. Have you done it yet? No. Time to rise, rise and shine, love. And it's such a, it's what I try to do in my sessions as well when I work with people is, and it's easy because when you see the light in others, when you see their light so clearly and so brightly, and you know what they're here for, you're not going to allow them to bullshit themselves. It's like, no, I won't, that's bullshit. And I've had people in my sessions go like with their jolting because I'm like, no. First of all, you don't talk about yourself that way. I won't allow that. Number two, you know what to do and it's time to go do it. And that is the most loving, kind, and caring, because that's the thing, love is not always, that well, I don't want to say it's not always soft and gentle, but it's also very strong and powerful, and a current and a quote unquote demand to rise, to be what you came to be, to do what you came to do. And that to me is what lies within, Mary, because if we look at the historical one, it's easy to look at her story and see the strength that she must have possessed in order for her to be willing to, be part of that whole journey. And it, if you look at it from a spiritual perspective, they knew what was going to happen, and to be able to stand there, to hold space for your beloved, to be crucified, and knowing what he has to go through, the strength that must have required of someone, is what is so inherent in her. And I think that's one of the most important messages of her. So I love that you just shared that she was like, are you kidding me? Like, we went through this, like, you know what to do. Okay. So, and also I want to say, when you say an oracle course, and because there are many different ways into yourself, and it's a journey and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I'm hearing. And that's also what I see in your work, is that it's always a journey into yourself. And you use tarot cards and oracle cards so beautifully as a way to deeper understanding, healing, awakening, or what? Like, tell me more. Is that not like how you?
Yeah, I do. Like when I was kind of coming up with the sales page for the course, and thinking about, what is this course really?
Yeah.
At the bottom line is that this isn't really even a course in how to read cards. This is a course in how to tune into your own intuition, and how to tune into your guides and your angels and your higher self through the cards.
Yes.
It's like the cards are just this beautiful tool that you can use to help you do that on your journey. Yeah. And so, and again, like all of my work is like we were talking before, like all of my work is very much about, I'm helping you to help yourself. Like, I'm not here to just turn over oracle cards for you and tell you, well, this is going to happen, and Mary Magdalene says this to you, and like this is what you need to go and do. It's like I'm holding space for you to consider, like, your path, to think about what you want to do next. I'll ask you questions, I'll put things out there that'll make you think, but I'm never going to tell somebody what to do. But I'm very excited and passionate about helping people to be able to do that for themselves.
And I think that's the age that we're living in now. That's the time that we're living in now. Is that because I know that self-help and new age books has been around for a very long time, but it seems such an auspicious time and that's where Wi-Fi and the internet is such a incredible tool, is that you're able to find these resources. You're able to do it online. You don't have to meet up like they did when Yeshua and Mary Magdalene walked the earth. You can actually join with somebody like we are, online, or not necessarily face to face. And that's where it becomes such a powerful tool for healing and learning and understanding, but also of opening. And it's like I said, there's some, like, for some it's crystals, for others it's oils, for some it's oracle cards or tarot cards or beads, or it can be a lot of different things. But it's like there's one song but many DJs, and the path is different for everyone, which is such a beautiful thing. And that, again, is probably where, to me, religion goes off, because it can be very narrow-minded in the sense that it's dogma and doctrine, and you have to do this, and then you have to do this and that. So have you found the answers that you started out seeking?
Almost to the point where it's like, can you please just be quiet? No, I'd never wish for that. But yeah, like, from that place that I was at like a few years ago, where I was like, I just want to hear the voice of my guides, and I just want to know what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. Like, from there to where I am now, like, it just feels like such a huge bridge between here and there. Yeah.
Okay, so there are two things that I want to ask you. One thing has to do with your book. The second thing is the first thing. We're going to come to the book in a second, because I love that book. And I will probably most likely also love the sequel coming out soon, I hope. No, just kidding. But it is to do with haters. For some reason, not haters, but I know that you being, or having a Christian, or somewhat having been in the church, you having Wicca, and then also being, you have a large Instagram following, and you share a lot of deep spiritual stuff. I haven't seen any negative comments, but I'm sure that you've received your fair share of it. And I wonder, how did you, move through it? Like, move through because part of being what I consider a Magdalene in this day and age, is speaking our truth. And when we begin to share our truth, then there are those that are unfortunately still in dark, which is their journey, and that's where they're at. I'm sure that we were in the dark as well at some point or another in other lifetimes. And I also know that we carry the ancestral energy sometimes, or of past lifetimes, and move through that. So how has that been for you in terms of, when you growing your, I don't want to say followers, but growing your platform, and then in terms of speaking your truth, and then being met not always by the most loving, kind, and caring comments?
It's been a journey.
Yeah.
It's been quite a journey. The first time I really experienced it was before I'd actually started my business, when I was at the point where I was blogging about tarot.
Yeah.
But I wasn't doing it as a job. Like, I was just sort of like sharing my journey. And I had this really, really horrible experience in a tarot group online. And a whole bunch of people like basically bullied me. They ganged up on me. They started telling me that I didn't know how to read tarot. I was reading tarot wrong. Like, I shouldn't come into this group and say that, basically what I'd said was that I'm an intuitive reader. And the way I read tarot is that I turn over the cards and I just tell you what comes through. Like, I just, I'm not focusing on, oh, well, this symbol means this and this symbol means that, and this color means this other thing. And there's nothing wrong with reading in that way, of course. No. There's many ways to read the tarot. Yeah. But I was just kind of sharing, well, this is how I'm reading at the moment. Yeah. And just a response was like, just blew me away, like how negative people were about that. And it was really hurtful. Like, it was really, really hard and hurtful, because I had thought that other tarot readers, I thought they were my people. Yeah. Like, I thought, these are my people. Yeah. Like, I was expecting to get hate from Christians, from some of my family, from people that I knew who were just going to be like, you're reading tarot, like, that's the devil's work, whatever. Yeah. What I wasn't expecting was to go into a tarot community and have people in that community tell me that I'm doing it wrong. Yeah. So I've been kind of, this whole time that I've been on this path, I've been getting it from like all sides. Like, I've had tarot readers tell me that I'm not reading the tarot properly. I've had people who are more on the kind of love and light Jesus side tell me you shouldn't be reading tarot. So I've had like, everywhere I go, it's like, oh, you're not witchy enough. Oh, you're too witchy. So it's been this weird middle ground that I kind of, where I like to sit and where I feel comfortable, but a lot of other people don't feel comfortable in that place. And so sometimes they will take the fact that I am here, like sitting in the middle, they take it as somehow like an affront to their belief system. Yes. Which is really interesting. And at the start, when I started sharing, it was really hard, because I did have people come out of nowhere and tell me, what you're doing is the devil's work. Even just silly comments on YouTube, like, people will say something about like the way that you look, or or your accent, or the way that you talk, and all of these kinds of things. And on this, at first it was really hurtful, and now I'm kind of at this point where, like you said at the start of this, when we start talking about this, everyone's on their own journey. Yeah. And if somebody sees my video and it triggers something in them and they don't like it and they feel the need to comment, it's not my stuff. It's not about me. It's part of their journey. And I always ask that my work will serve people. And I feel like sometimes the people who come to your work and are incredibly negative or complain about your hair or whatever, sometimes those people are actually getting something out of that you will never understand, and you will never realize. No. So those hate comments aren't always coming from that place of
but what for me, I haven't had a whole lot, but I've also decided that for me, I'm like, delete. If people, people can comment on the content, but if they become personal, or then I'm like, delete and block, delete and block, delete and block, delete and block, because that's how I assign love. Like love is also about having boundaries. Like how you said about protecting your own energy is like protecting. Yeah. And again, in everything that you say, I see this, I see you being this bridge, or this helper. No, but not helper, but it's like you bridge the worlds, and so that people who are on either side is able to then cross over and perhaps even meet in the middle and find their own ground. And that is what it's really about. And I know this, in your work, it's not about stuffing things down or your truth down people's throats. It's about supporting them and finding their own. One of the ways that I see you as being an incredible powerhouse and bridge builder as well is in your authorship, if that's what it's called. You wrote this amazing young adult book, time traveling 80s. And truth be told, for me, I was never like an 80s girl at all, but you brought it through so vividly that I was like, just before we were on our call, there was I think it was a Bon Jovi song. I can't remember now, but I was just rocking out to it. And the first thing I thought of was, that's because I'm sitting down with Vix in like 5 minutes. And it was just like an 80s song that I was just rocking. I thought it was such a beautiful sign. But that's one of the things where you're able to, and this is me, this is what I see is that you're able to plant the seeds of there being another way, in terms of time traveling and so forth. What happened? When did that start? Like, when did it start? When did you become an author? Because I know it happened way before the book was ever published, but when did that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the really simple answer to that is that I've always been an author. Like when I was little, I used to love just sitting down on the weekend and like writing stories. And I was never somebody who had a talent for that or was good at that. Like when I wrote stories at school, I never got like, oh, you're really good at writing stories. Like nothing ever. Like nobody ever said that you were good at it. But I really enjoyed it. I really loved kind of creating characters and creating these worlds. And that was just really fun for me when I was younger. Yeah. And then when I kind of got into high school, like I didn't write a story for many, many, many years. And I first had this idea for this story when I was teaching in a high school back in Australia. I was working as an English teacher, and the school was pretty old, and there was like this book room where all of the books were stacked up. And every time I went in there, I felt like I was going back in time, because there was like, it just looked like this room was exactly as it would have been like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And so every time I walked in there, I just had this feeling of like, oh, have I walked into another time? Like, this feels so cool. And then I kind of like, pretend like, oh, maybe I could come out and it would be like, the 80s.
I recognize that room.
Yeah. And so then I had this idea, like, maybe this is a story, like maybe this is a novel. And so I kind of went home that night that I first had that feeling, and I started writing the story. And it took me 10 years to finish it, but I did finish it. Finish it. And hopefully the sequel won't take 10 years. But yeah, I just over the years, like there were times when I put it away and I, didn't think about it for a while, but it always came back. Like it was always calling, like, finish it, write us, like tell the story. And so in the end, I, again, it's interesting at the same time that I'm working with Mary Magdalene, that I just had this feeling of, you just have to write this book, like just birth it, like it needs to come out of you, because it's, I was holding it energetically for so long.
And it is so good. I know I'm totally biased because I love the book, but I will of course link to it in the show notes and the blog post so that people can, download a sample and hopefully buy it or buy a copy, because it is, I set this in my Amazon review. It's such a rich, vivid story. You really bring them to life. And had I not known that you were self-published indie author, I would be like, what? Like it's just, it's mind-blowing. And one of the things that I keep hearing in what you've said over and over again is you put in the work. There, like you put in the work. And also the name Perseverance came up in terms of a 10-year journey. Yeah. Perseverance and divine timing, understanding it's never too late. Like and I want to, this seems like someone who's listening has to hear this. If there's something that has been tugging your heartstrings, and even though it's been tugging your heartstrings for a very long time, don't bash yourself, but love yourself. And start bringing it through step by step by step, because it's time. And so there, and that lesson of work, because sometimes I think that gets lost in the spiritual world, is like, oh, we just sit down and then we manifest. Like we're just supposed to be thinking, and maybe thinking works for some, but for my understanding of the way law of attraction manifestation works is that it comes through me. And so it is through me, through the inspired action that I take. It's through the alignment of my thoughts and, with my actions, my wisdom, with my knowledge, with my actions. It is through that it is birth. And that's what I am here for as a vessel. And I believe that we all are as a vessel. We're here to bring through that divine, the God, source through us. We could go on and on. Is there something that we haven't touched upon that you would like to share? Any last words or something that is coming through, or are we complete and done?
I don't think so. I feel like we're complete.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so too. I think this was, there's so much wisdom. There's been so much wisdom in what you've shared. So thank you, Vix, for coming on. I will, of course, include links to everything you've got, your website, your social media, everything. So if people want to check you out, and, I know that you don't read as much as you used to for people, but you do have openings. And then there's the course, then you have your club and the book. But I will link to everything so that people can see that. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
That is what I had for you in today's episode of the Magdalene Voices. For all of the deeds and the details, find the show notes on my website, mariastella.com. Know that I would love to hear how it resonated with you and what you got from it. So tag me on Instagram or leave me a comment on either my website or YouTube. Finally, if it served you, please take a moment to share it with a friend or on social media. God bless.